All right, folks. So we are going to now get into what exactly happened at these Iranian nuclear facilities. So the Pentagon says Iranian nuclear capabilities are devastated after U.S. strikes. That's right. This was called Operation Midnight Hammer. We're going to hear Pete Hegseth tell us all about it. Now, to be fair, every night is Operation Midnight Hammer at the Pete Hegseth residence, so this is not unusual. So he is well versed in explaining Project Midnight Hammer. So let's hear from Pete Hegseth.
Trump's orders, U.S. Central Command conducted a precision strike in the middle of the night against 3 nuclear facilities in Iran, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, in order to destroy or severely degrade Iran's nuclear program. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will demonstrate, it was an incredible and overwhelming success. The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful, and it was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program. But it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people. For the entirety of his time in office, President Trump has consistently stated for over 10 years that Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. Full stop. Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump. The operation President Trump planned was bold and it was brilliant, showing the world that American deterrence is back. When this president speaks, the world should listen. And the U.S. military, we can back it up. The most powerful military the world has ever known. No other country on planet Earth could have conducted the operation that the chairman is going to outline this morning. Not even close. Just like Soleimani found out in the first term, Iran found out when POTUS says 60 days that he seeks peace and negotiation, he means 60 days of peace and negotiation. Otherwise, that nuclear program, that nuclear capability will not exist. He meant it.
We'll rally, stand up, be American.
That's right. The U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear sites involved 7 B-2 stealth bombers and also included at least 1 submarine, according to General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon press conference. Kane said the mission, dubbed Operation Midnight Hammer, represented the largest B-2 strike in U.S. history, involving more than 125 aircraft, including decoy flights, and saw 75 precision-guided weapons dropped on the sites. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction, Kane said. So let's hear some of his closing remarks at the press conference this morning.
This mission demonstrates the unmatched reach, coordination, and capability of the United States military. In just a matter of weeks, this went from strategic planning to global execution. This operation underscores the unmatched capabilities and global reach of the United States military. As the president clearly said last night, no other military in the world could have done this. I join the president and the secretary in being incredibly proud of the air crews, naval forces, cyber operators, planners, and support teams, and commanders who made this mission possible. It is their skill, discipline, and teamwork that makes this operation possible.
So really talking this up here, when asked on NBC News Meet the Press about the status of Iran's nuclear enrichment sites, Vice President Vance said he was very confident that we have substantially delayed their development of a nuclear weapon, and that was the goal of this attack. So here is J.D. Vance on Meet the Press.
The nuclear enrichment sites were, quote, completely and totally obliterated. There is some question about that, though, this morning. Do you have 100% confidence that Iran's nuclear sites were totally destroyed?
Well, Kristen, I'm not going to get into sensitive intelligence about what we've seen on the ground there in Iran, but we've seen a lot, and I feel very confident that we have substantially delayed their development of a nuclear weapon, and that was the goal of this attack. That's why it was a success. And, of course, what happens next, again, Kristen, is up to the Iranians.
Substantially delayed by years? What does substantial
Well, again, Kristen,
mean?
I'm not going to get into sensitive intelligence here, but I think that we have really pushed their program back by a very long time. I think that it's going to be many, many years before the Iranians are able to develop a nuclear weapon. But again, our goal is that they're never able to develop a nuclear weapons program, and that is a conversation that we're going to have with the Iranians and also with our allies in the region.
So Iran, again...
Our allies in the region, meaning the maniacs who instigated this war that they've wanted for decades. So let's see here. How effective was the U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear sites? A visual guide. All right. So here you could see this is the first of the sites. What is it? What is the name of the fucking thing? Fordham. Yeah, Fordham. Yes, this is Fordham.
They bombed Fordham.
Yeah, Fordham. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What the fuck is it? Fordo. That's what it's called, right? Yeah. So here you can see the before picture. Oops, I'm sorry. The before picture here, and then the after picture here. Now, it's a little difficult to see exactly what we're looking at and the implications of it, but we'll get into that as the article displays. As you can see, the main building there, kind of that like white building on the left side inside that loop, that seems to have remained intact, but then you could obviously see some damage sustained to the rest of it. The Atomic Energy Organization of Iran confirmed that attacks took place on its Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz sites, but insisted its nuclear program would not be stopped. Iran and the UN nuclear watchdog said there were no immediate signs of radioactive contamination around the three locations after the strikes. The Iranian Red Crescent Society reported no deaths from the U.S. strikes, appearing to confirm Iranian claims they had been largely evacuated in advance. Long regarded as the most difficult military target among Iran's nuclear sites, the uranium enrichment facilities at Fordo, the primary target of the operation, are buried beneath the Zagros Mountains. Reports have suggested that the site was constructed beneath 45 to 90 meters of bedrock, largely limestone and dolomite. The attack, codenamed Operation Midnight Hammer, was carried out by 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers flying from the U.S. after a deception flight by other B-2s into the Pacific. Tomahawk missiles were fired from U.S. ships in waters south of Iran. The result, to a large extent, depends on the kind of concrete inside the facility. Estimates of the bunker busters' penetration are based largely on reinforced concrete resistant up to 5,000 pounds per square inch. Iran is believed to have used more resistant concrete. While video from the site showed evidence of a fire in the immediate aftermath, satellite images published on Sunday were suggestive but far from conclusive. The main support building at the site appeared to be undamaged, as we saw earlier, but the topography of a prominent area of ridgeline appeared to have altered and been flattened out, with some evidence of rock scarring close to 2 clusters of bomb craters around the ridge. Analysts had suggested that a strike could hit the main entrance tunnel to the site, but the main effort appears to have been in a different location. At odds with Trump's claim of complete obliteration, 2 Israeli officials who spoke to the New York Times described serious damage at Fordo, but said the site had not been completely destroyed. So now you can get a little better idea of what we're looking at as they label things. So the entrances to the underground facility, those are in the yellow squares. The enrichment plant, which is that rectangular building on the left, the white building, that appears to have not been destroyed. Doesn't look like it sustained much damage. Of course, this is just a satellite photo, so we can't say that conclusively. But then you can see inside the red circles are the large holes visible along the ridge above the facility. That, I assume, is where the bunker buster bombs were able to penetrate. So on the right side, you can see how these work. Once deployed from high altitude, GPS guidance system locks onto target. The bomb relies on weight and velocity to penetrate hardened surfaces. So you can assume that those craters in the ground are where those bunker busters broke the surface. And then the question is, how far down did they go and how much damage did they do? We don't really have conclusive information about that, although, of course, there are competing claims. The Americans are saying it was total destruction. The Iranians are saying they only really damaged the tunnels heading in and out. It's not conclusive at this time whether either of those descriptions are fully accurate or whose is more accurate. Isfahan's nuclear technology center was struck by Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from an Ohio-class submarine as opposed to bunker busters. Video posted on social media showed a distant detonation from the site on Saturday night. According to the IAEA, in addition to 4 hit by Israeli strikes, 6 other buildings had now been attacked, including a fuel rod production facility. It said facilities targeted at Isfahan either contained no nuclear material or small quantities of natural or low enriched uranium. So here you have, this is the Isfahan before and after. You could see noticeable damage from the contrasting satellite photos there. So this is a closer look here. Imagery from Isfahan nuclear facility where U.S. Navy launched 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Natanz, this is the third one, had previously been damaged by the first Israeli strikes of the conflict, with assessments then suggesting they had hit the power plant supplying the main centrifuge hall. Uranium had been enriched up to 60%, short of weapons-grade material. It appears that Natanz's underground enrichment hall was targeted. Enhancement of satellite images from the site on Sunday showed fresh damage to overground buildings and new cratering in the center of the site. So once again, there is the before and after, and you can see those craters, which look similar to the craters at Fordo. Before and after satellite images from the Maxar Technologies taken on June 15th and 22nd. Iran has claimed that it evacuated the site several days ago, and satellite imagery from several days ago suggests there was unusual truck traffic at Fordo. That appears to confirm the movement of some material from the site, possibly including the uranium stockpile or parts of it, which remains unaccounted for. Hassan Abedini, the deputy political head of Iran's state broadcaster, said Iran had evacuated the 3 sites, Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo, some time ago. The enriched uranium reserves had been transferred from the nuclear centers, and there are no materials left there that, if targeted, would cause radiation and be harmful to our compatriots, he said. 3 days before the U.S. attack, 16 cargo trucks were seen near the Fordo entrance tunnel. The head of the AEOI, Mohammad Eslami, claimed this month that Iran had another enrichment site in a secure and invulnerable location that could house centrifuges. Analysts have long argued that while it is possible to disrupt the physical function of a nuclear facility and limit the scope of a program through, for example, the killing of scientists, which we know Israel did, the breadth of technical knowledge acquired during a decades-long program is impossible to destroy. Ultimately, the question is whether the U.S.-Israeli attacks are seen as sufficient for Iran to capitulate, or whether they instead encourage the regime to accelerate its efforts to produce a viable nuclear weapon. I think the latter is far more likely than the former. That's the long-term question. In the short term, the question is, what is the scope of the Iranian retaliation, and does that invite the United States to deploy forces to the region? This is why I said in an earlier segment, for all the talk, even though Donald Trump just undid that with his, lunatic Truth Social post, all the talk about how, no, we're not really in this for regime change, that's irrelevant. you struck these 3 key nuclear sites. Iran is saying they have another one that we don't know about. Seems like they may have that. Fiorella Isabel tweeted out it would be foolish to think they don't have a secret site that they can offload this stuff to in an anticipation of an attack that certainly they had seen coming for a while. We can't confirm that, obviously, but that does seem like a claim to take very seriously. And then, obviously, the question beyond that, that's sort of the long-term question of does this nuclear program continue, which I think it will. I can't imagine they will take this as just a sufficient reprimanding to fall in line. But irrespective of that, what is the retaliation? Because at this point, that is the only question that determines the short-term trajectory of this war. What is the scope and nature of their retaliation? If they hit American interests, it's pretty obvious what we're going to do. If they lay off American interests but keep hitting Israeli interests, at that point, what does Donald Trump do? All indications are that he is going to do whatever Israel wants either way. But that remains the only real question mark in terms of how this is going to go. Long term, is this going to make them more likely to develop a nuclear weapon? Yes. And you know what I base that on? The fact that we had a deal with them in 2015 that Donald Trump scratched. And if we take this administration at their word, that means that they took that as an invitation to develop up to 60%. So let's just play their game. If that is the case, what will this do? In other words, if the scrapping of the first deal led us to this point, then what is this going to do? This is going to lead them even further down the road of nuclearization, which will make the Middle East even less stable. And as Noam Chomsky said, we played this on the Jimmy Dore show, you could solve all this very, very easily. Israel could give up their nukes. Once Israel gives up their nukes, the Arab states in the region have already said, we will make this a nuclear weapons-free zone. 5 such zones exist in the world. South America is one giant nuclear weapons-free zone. Did you know that? It's amazing how few people know this. All the South American countries signed a treaty saying we will not develop nukes so that one country can't have their boot on the neck of the other country with the nuclear threat hanging over them. The Middle Eastern countries, the Arab states, are willing to make the Middle East, a very volatile region, a nuclear weapons-free zone. You know who won't do it? Israel. You know why they won't do it? Because they already have nuclear weapons. Because they already have nuclear weapons. And Iran is the bully in the region, not Israel.
Yeah, if you look at the message that we have put out to the world under Democratic and Republican administrations, the message is if you deal in good faith with the United States on developing nuclear weapons, you end up with a knife in your ass.
Right.
That's what happened to Gaddafi. That's what he got for dealing with the United States in good faith. That order was under Obama. It's not a Republican Democrat thing. Look at North Korea. You see us trying to invade North Korea. You think we would not invade North Korea if they did not have nuclear weapons?
Of course.
That we would not have instigated a South Korean invasion of the North probably decades ago if they did not have nuclear weapons, if we did not have to worry about that. We probably would have done it 15, 20 years ago. We would have pushed the South into North Korea. That's the message we're putting out to the world.
Yep.
So whatever happens with Iran, the rest of the world is never going to want to make any kind of deal with us again. And they're going to be very careful to keep any programs like this they have very secret and very hidden.
Yep.
You're telling the world you have to proliferate. You're seeing a lot of people say with some justification, the biggest mistake Iran made was not developing a nuclear weapon.
Yep.
They developed a nuclear weapon, they'd be safe right now. None of this would be happening. That's why they don't want them to have a nuclear weapon, because they want to be able to keep the boot on their neck. Does anyone really believe, like set aside the propaganda they push out to the rubes? Does anybody really believe that Iran, if they did have a nuclear weapon, would just launch it at Israel? Because mutually assured destruction.
Right.
Right. All right. Cold wars don't get any hotter than our war was with Russia for decades. Did anybody launch a nuke? No, because they didn't want to get nuked. Mutually assured destruction. Even if they had a nuke, Israel has nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
So what makes you think they would launch it? And in terms of it being a threat to us, nobody is proposing that Iran is anywhere near being able to send an intercontinental ballistic missile to the United States. So that argument is nonsense. This is purely about Israel. And even on that level, it doesn't hold up. They're the ones with the nukes.
They're the ones with the nukes. Exactly. They're the ones who have the nukes. So we are not in any physical danger at all. Israel claims they might be, but even if Iran were to develop a nuclear weapon, yes, Israel already has the deterrence. Not only do they have a nuclear weapon, they have the Samson option. They have a codified, protocol to basically use it to bring
and they're
about
right next
the
door
end of
to
the
Iran.
region.
The fallout would hit them.
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
It's complete insanity. Of course, I mean, this is just propaganda on another level, which is not surprising. I mean, you knew it would get to this point if they were ever to pull the trigger on this war. And now they are looking as though they are going to. And we just have to do everything we can to stop it. We have to communicate to all of these politicians, this is unacceptable. The lesson of Iraq is still fresh enough in our minds. We're not going to fall for this again. Absolutely not. We cannot.
Please clap.